Great. Good morning. I can see that people are logging in, so that's great. Just bear with us a few moments. It takes a minute or two for everybody to be able to log in via Zoom. So we're just going to let people join. Bear with me just a moment. I'm going to change some of the settings on this. And so first of all, can I just ask if you can hear us okay? Can you just say hello or hi in the chat? Just say something, anything at all, so I know that the chat is working and that you can hear us. So if you could just say something. If you look on your Zoom control panel, you'll see that you've got a series of buttons at the bottom. So you've got things like Q&A and you've got chat function. You can also reorder things. Um, so I haven't had anyone say anything. Is my audio working okay? Are you able to hear me? Jack, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, Kim. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Good morning, everyone.
that's fine. So it's a bit worrying
Or
that
you could
nobody's
give
come
us a
through.
thumbs up
A thumbs
react
up or
if you want to give
anything
us a
or
thumbs up react.
anything. Right, I'll recheck the. There we go. So I've adjusted that. So you should be able to message us, but I haven't had anything back. But as we can hear each other, I'm going to guess that our audio is coming through all right. Okay, well, very good morning. It's a sunny, cool but sunny and bright morning here in London, in the UK. It's 9 o'clock, so it's the start of the day for us. So it's great to have you with us. My name is Kim Morgan. I'm the Outreach and Communications Coordinator here at UCL Biochemical Engineering. And it's great to have you with us for this Q&A session on studying a degree at UCL Biochemical Engineering. I'm joined by Dr. Jack Jeffries, who's the admissions tutor for our undergraduate programs. He's here to answer any and all of your questions. It's really helpful if you can put them in the Q&A box, just because it's a lot easier for us to gather those up. But we have actually had a few questions come in advance anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the questions that have been asked of us already, and then just chip in and anything you want to ask as you go along. Before we get going, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a poll because Jack actually pre-recorded a video and I know that some people have been able to see it, so I'm just going to launch this poll just to ask whether anyone's seen the video already. If you have seen the video, click yes. If you haven't got any idea what I'm talking about, just click what video. Um, okay, so the majority of people haven't seen the video. That's helpful for us because Jack, in the video, there are a lot of things that we go through, but seeing as most people haven't seen the video, I think Jack, it might be quite useful just to blast through the slides,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
because
Okay,
it
can do.
because in that case, if most people had seen the video, we wouldn't go through that again for you. But I think it'd be quite useful to tread that again. So I'll leave that with you, Jack, and then I'll post the
Kim, how
questions.
long have we got in the session?
We've
We
got
got an
45 minutes in total.
45 minutes total. So normally I speak for about 30, but so we've got enough time for questions. Maybe I'll try and reduce
Okay,
the to like 20 or less.
cool.
Let's see. Let me share. You've got to let me share though, Kim.
There we go. So there we go. That's
Give
activated.
over control to me. Perfect. Okay, let's have a look at what we can share. I want to share that. Is that coming through loud and clear?
It's just
Yeah,
loading up at the moment. So
I'm going to go straight to this slide.
it's currently presenter mode. So just want to pop it into slideshow.
Yeah, right.
That looks great.
And I'm going to get rid of this thing, which always gets in my way. All right, great. Well, I'm gonna whiz through these slides. So when people come to us, they come to these things, they're often not sure what biochemical engineering is. And that's not surprising because it's kind of a new field. And when I say new in science means within the last 50 to 70 years, because, science is quite old. But it's new in the last 50 years, and it's really coming to prominence in the last 5 to 10 years. And in the future, it's going to be a really, really big deal. It already is a big deal, but because lots of the new therapeutics, new medicines, new things that we produce will be made using biological systems. Yeah. And why it's so new and why it's new in comparison maybe with things like chemical engineering or chemistry, it's because of the complexity of the systems that we didn't really understand. We didn't have the tools to understand. So a lot of biochemical engineering is based on the sort of biological revolution that came out in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when we began to understand how life systems worked. Yeah, so we can think about that from the discovery of DNA, genes, how organisms replicate, how they make proteins, understanding how life systems do what they do. And from that scientific revolution, those understandings, along with the technologies that were developed to discover them and investigate them, were put together with some of the advancements that came out of chemical engineering. Okay. And that gave us biochemical engineering, because a lot of the fundamental science is at the small scale, at the lab bench. But engineering as a discipline is really focused on application. So bringing products and applications to people. And to do that, of course, you need to do that at scale. You need to do that at the very large scale, because you need to access mass markets. And so when you take a biological system that you're studying in the lab, you're doing that on the small scale in a few mils, a few hundred mils. But if you want to produce something, you're going to have to do that at the liter scale, at the tens of liters, at the tens of thousands of liter scale to bring products to market. And so that technology, how to manipulate fluids at the scale, was already developed for the processing of really the fossil fuel industry. Yeah? How do you take large volumes of one thing and turn it into something else? So biochemical engineering took that chemical engineering know-how, how to create a reactor at scale, applied and mixed that with the understandings that came out of the biological revolution, the underpinnings of life, biotechnology, and in the interface of those two, you get biochemical engineering, yeah? Because if you've got an organism and you're going to use it to produce a product, you're going to have to grow that at scale, at the 10,000 liter scale or more. You have to provide the living conditions for that organism to survive and thrive. You need to give it the correct temperature. Yeah, you need to make sure it's got enough oxygen. You need to make sure it's got enough food. And you need to make sure that all of the organisms in that 10,000 liters get the oxygen, get the food, get the temperature all at the same time. So you really need to understand how to mix liquids, how to transfer heat, how you transfer mass in those environments. And that's all the sort of the chemical engineering underpinning know-how. But at the same time, you need to understand what is it that these organisms need to grow? How do they make the product that we want them to make? How can we make them make more of it? Yeah, and that's the biotechnology side. So biochemical engineering is that interdisciplinary interface between those two disciplines. Okay. Let me click on to the next slide. But it's across the scale. So I've talked a lot about large scale, but biochemical engineers really are involved in across what you might call the value chain, yeah, or the developmental levels, yeah. So we're right down at the bottom, doing that early work, discovering strains, engineering strains, making them make that product at the lab bench. Once you've got a good hit, you might be like, okay, this looks interesting. How do I take it to that next scale to test? You go to pilot, maybe 5 to 10 liters. Still looking good. Okay, now I need to go to industrial scale. I need to go to tens of thousands of liters or hundreds of thousands of liters. How do I do that in a way which maintains its operative efficiency? And of course, that's not the end of the story, because once you've made a product like that, you need to get it to people. And most people won't take a slurry out of a bioreactor. Nobody wants that. They want it in a form that they can take. Yeah, if it's a medicine. So that's a pill or an injection or a liquid format. Okay. And it has to be packaged. Yeah. And it has to last for a long time, because the longer you can make something last, the more people it can get to. Yeah. If it can last without cold chain storage, it can get to more people in more places. Okay. So biochemical engineers are involved across that, engineering the organism, scaling it up. How do we formulate that medicine to last long so that it can make it to the people who need it? Yeah. And also, how can we make it so that it's really good and efficient in the clinic with the doctors? Yeah, with the patients. So we apply all of those fundamental techniques like biology, chemistry, engineering, yeah, to work across that value chain. Okay, speed through these slides. Okay, and this is just to describe that. So, I'm in biochemical engineering. I work at the small scale on the lab bench. Yeah, a few mils to 100 mils, maybe. Okay, identifying new enzymes, new organisms. Some colleagues work at the pilot scale, that 2 to 10 liters, taking it up through the scales to process. Yeah, then once you've made it, how do you clean it up? How do you make it pure? How do you make it in a form that can get to people so that it doesn't? They get the medicine, but they don't get the organism that made the medicine. Yeah. How can you quality assure that? How can you make sure that you're delivering the best product every time? Yeah. And that it's always of the top quality. Okay. Biochemical engineers involved across that whole value chain. And I say value chain, of course, because the way products are mediated to people in the system we live is through markets. Yeah. So understanding how much it costs to make these goods, how much you can sell it for, who you can sell it to, okay, and how much that money can come back and regenerate that cycle is a key question. Yeah, because we have to make things which are affordable. Otherwise, they can't get to the people who need them. So I always say it's great if you could have the best therapy in the world. If it's so expensive to make that no one can afford it, no one can buy it, it's not going to help anybody. Yeah. So we have to design and develop processes that are, yes, effective at treating or providing what we need to provide, but also efficient and economical so that it can get to the most people possible. Yeah. So we have to understand that whole value chain. And later on, when I talk about the degrees, I'll talk about how we blend that learning. So it's not just theoretical, how to produce and do the science, the engineering. It's also an understanding of the context within which engineers work, which is within market systems and market mechanisms. Yeah. Because engineers are application focused. So that's sort of biochemical engineering in a very small nutshell, a very brief description, and there's lots more to it than that. But that's what is biochemical engineering, in my opinion. But who are we, okay, at UCL? So UCL in the UK is the home of biochemical engineering. So I spoke about how it's a relatively new discipline, okay, that came out of chemical engineering and biotechnology. And UCL was the first university to teach biochemical engineering as an undergraduate subject in the UK, okay? As a research department in chemical engineering, we had that first MSc in biochemical engineering in 1966. Okay. In 1993, the home building of biochemical engineering, which is this building at the top of the slide here. Let's see if I can get a pointer up. This is always a challenge, isn't it? This building here, the ACBE, was built, okay? And it's dedicated for biochemical engineering. So the rest of the engineering faculty is in a building called Roberts altogether. Biochemical engineering has their own building, the ACBE, built purpose-built for us. That's 1993. In 1998, we have the undergraduate degree, okay? And then the new chapter is this building over here, which is in Stratford in London, which is the old Olympic Park, so the London 2012 Olympic site. That was part of the London Olympics, was a regeneration of that area, and UCL was involved in that. We've built this new building here, which is called we have labs on there called the Manufacturing the Futures Lab, okay? We also have a wet lab, and we do some teaching in there as well. So that's the new phase of biochemical engineering. Right, let's see if I can click on. That's the building, but what about the people, okay? We are a group of academic researchers who all have our research active. We all have our own areas of research, but we also all teach. So all academic researchers in the department teach, and they teach on the degree streams, okay? And we all have research labs. And what that means is that the research that we do in the labs comes back and influences the teaching, okay? So in the teaching, you get that cutting edge level research, which filters back into the things that you're taught, okay? So that's academic researchers or teachers, but we also have dedicated teaching staff who are lecturers, teachers, who are dedicated just to teaching and facilitating teaching within the department as well. Let me click on. What's the sort of research that feeds back into the teaching in the department? There's lots of ways you can slice the work that we do at biochemical engineering, but one of the ways we talk about it is sort of in three pillars. So we have industrial biotechnology. So that's using microorganisms to produce value-added or industrial chemicals, things like biofuels, okay, or small molecule medicines, things like paracetamol, aspirin, or antibiotics, yeah, chemical medicines. It may be more recently things like using biological systems to break down plastics. Yeah, how do we deal with a plastic waste problem? Yeah, how do we clean up water using biological systems? Or how do we produce sort of what we might call mid-value added chemicals? So replacing fossil fuel feedstocks to make things which go into oils or paints or chemical synthons, yeah? Things like that. How do we get away from fossil fuels using biological systems? That's industrial biotech. One pillar, okay? The other pillar, one of the other pillars, is macromolecular medicines. So this is medicines, but it's larger things than small molecule drugs, okay? So it's not your aspirins and paracetamols. It's things like vaccines, yeah? mRNA vaccines, antibody therapies, things which are larger molecules, many atoms, many molecules, okay, but are medicines. How do you make them? How do you produce them at scale? How do you formulate them? Yeah, one of the things we learned or saw in COVID was the introduction of a new type of vaccine, mRNA. But it wasn't very stable. It had to have a lot of cold chain storage, had to be kept very low temperatures, yeah, which made it hard to get it to places without that cold chain storage. How do we make mRNA vaccines so that they're more stable at room temperature? How do we prepare them so that you don't need that cold chain storage? And in that way, how do you make them last longer? So you have to make less, okay? But you can get them to more people. That's a very important part of it. Yeah, that's all macromolecular medicines. The third pillar we have is around cell and gene therapy. Okay, so that's using mammalian cells, more like animal cells, okay, to produce therapeutics, things like stem cell regenerative medicines. Okay, can we regenerate parts of the human body using people's own cells, their stem cells? Some of the more advanced therapeutics, like gene therapy things, so genetic editing to treat inherited diseases, genetic engineering of the immune system to treat cancers, okay, all that sort of space. But also, what comes under there, which is kind of displayed by this image, is lab grown meat, which sounds a bit strange to put that with cell and gene therapy, which is more about, regenerative med. But all of the technology that you use to grow stem cells to regenerate people's bodies is the technology you use to grow cells to make lab grown meat. So there's an overlap there between the technologies, which is why lab grown meat falls into that. So we have those three pillars, and there's a lot of interplay between those different pillars as well. And as I said before, all that research informs the teaching. So all of that cutting edge research is fed back into the talk program. Okay. So these are the case studies. This is the stuff that people are bringing into their talk program to teach you. Okay. That's sort of the theoretical academic framework. But we also have, I'm just keeping track on the time. I don't want to go too long when I give chance for questions. So we have a focus on group work, small group activities in the lab or in the classroom around problems that build practical skills in the lab, absolutely, but also interpersonal skills, the ability to work in teams, okay? Because if you go on from us to work in a career in industry or in academia, you will be working in teams, you will be working with other people. You need to be able to work interdisciplinary and with other people, okay? So we roll that into our curriculum as well. It's not all just theoretical desk-based work. It is practical work, it is team-based work as well. Okay, very quickly through the three streams we have. We have the BEng and the MEng stream. That's effectively the same stream. It's the biochemical engineering stream. You can either do a 3 years course for the BEng, or you can stay an extra year to get the integrated masters. Yeah, so the masters in engineering. Okay, and that has a focus on engineering experience, engineering theory, and practical research skills. We have the BSc stream, the bioprocess of new medicine, business and management, and that's has a focus on how do you develop companies, how do you run companies, how do you get investment in companies that will generate the new medicines, yeah, the new advanced therapeutics. We do still teach some engineering skills, and it has a practical component as well, because we feel it's important for people who are going on to run these sort of industries to understand some of the underpinning concepts, yeah? Very quickly through what that looks like year by year. Okay, I've got my laser pointer. This is for the BEng and the MEng stream. Okay, so if you're doing the BEng and the MEng, you start off the same up to year 2. Okay, that first year we have people from different backgrounds who bring everybody up to the same level with fundamental courses in things like thermodynamics, maths, and biochemistry. Okay. You also start on the IEP, the Integrated Engineering Program. All of the undergraduates across the engineering faculty are enrolled on the same module, and it's a scenario-based, yeah, a problem-based, experiential, which means you're doing it physically, based teaching program. It's things like setting problems that in a group you solve together across the faculty, okay? And that starts in year 1. In year 2, you move on to more advanced modules of the same first year modules, and you can choose your minor courses from a suite of modules that are offered across the department. Those are your IEP minors, okay? And you can find what minors were offered online. You can look up IEP minor course, yeah, and you can find that. In year 3, if you're the BEng, this will be your final year, okay? You'll do a design project, which means that you work with other people from the BEng, people from the BSc. And what we do is we say, we want you to produce a therapy X. Maybe it's a viral vector, yeah, a vaccine. Go away, design the facility, tell us how you're going to make it, Yeah, design the reactors, design the footprint of the plant, tell us where you're going to sell it, where you're going to make it. You're going to site your plant in America, in Europe, or in Asia. You're going to sell it into the American market. How much you're going to sell it for? Give us your 5-year timeline. When do you think you'll start making the money back? What do you think your profit loss will be? What's your cost of goods? In that group, you develop and design that whole process. Okay. And then you present at the end of the term. Yeah. If you're in the 3-year B-Eng, that sort of wraps it all up. And then you finish with the B-Eng. If you're on the 4th year, you go on to a final year where you get to choose from 4 routes. Okay. I'll talk about that later. The one thing to really mention is that both of those degrees are accredited by the Institute of Chemical Engineers, and it's the start of a journey to become a chartered engineer. So to become a chartered engineer, you need to have done a degree which is accredited, and then you need 4 to 5 years of experience within a relevant industry, and then you can apply to chartership. But it starts with an accredited degree. So that's a quick overview, okay, of the B-Eng and the M-Eng. These are just some of the minors that you can choose from. Okay, there are many more that you can choose from, but we have things, if you're interested in coding, you can do a minor in that. If you're interested in regenerative meds, which is taught by us, you can do that. If you're interested in how engineering shapes public policy and how public policy shapes engineering, you can do an IP minor in that. And there's a whole other suite of things you can choose from as well. It's not just these 3. Okay. For that 4th year on the M-Eng, you can choose 4 routes. You could stay with us to do a master's in biochemical engineering, in which case you'll do some modules and a research project with a lab group in biochemical engineering, one of the researchers' academics. You can apply to do the study abroad program. Okay, so you can apply to study a year abroad at one of the international institutions that has an agreement with UCL. You could do a master's in business management. If you're really interested in the business side, you can specialize in that. Or you can do a master's with a year in industry, where we have a lot of industry partners and they suggest projects, and you can apply to get a project where you go to work at the company. So the year in industry and the study abroad are very competitive. The year in industry is dependent on how many projects are available. It's graded on attainment. Okay, so it's best students, and then it's done by interview by the industry partners as well. So it's not guaranteed. You have to be a top class student and you have to interview well with the industry partner. Okay, study abroad is dependent again on grading and how many places are available at that institution. And of course, you're competing with people in the department, but also people from across all the institutions who are part of the study abroad program. Okay, so those 2 are particularly competitive. Let's just have a look at the BSc very quickly. It's a 3-year degree. Okay, in that first year, you come in, you share some modules with the B-Eng, M-Eng cohort, because it's still important for you to understand biochemical engineering, but you have more of a focus on things like management, accountancy, and law. Okay, because you've got to focus on that business and management. In year 2, again, you have more advanced modules from the same first-year modules, biochemical engineering, law and management, okay? But you have optional modules, and you have more credits available for optional modules than the B-Eng and M-Eng. So the B-Eng, M-Eng have 15 credits available for optional modules. The BSc has 30, and you can take any module that is an optional module across the college. So if you're really interested in a foreign language, you could take a foreign language module. Okay. If you're really interested in computer coding, you could try and apply for the computer coding modules, although those are very competitive across the college. There's a lot of interest in those. Okay. But just as an example, that's year 2. In year 3, you do the design project I spoke about with the B-Eng, where you go in and you design that facility, a key part of that because you understand the markets and the process and the management side. But you also do a final year research project. Okay. So all of the academics put out a 3-month research project, which is either lab-based or desk-based, okay, to go work in the labs and do some benchtop research, okay, and that's available in year 3 for the BSc. These are our entry requirements. You can find them online. We require 3 A's for all the degree streams, but the subjects required are different. So for the B-Eng and the M-Eng, we absolutely require an A in maths, and we require an A in one of the sciences, so biology, chemistry, or physics. So you need an A in maths, and then you could have an A in biology, an A in chemistry, and an A in physics, or you could have 2 A's in 2 sciences. Yeah. And then that 3rd A is at your discretion. Okay, so it could be another science, or it could be a modern language, or it could be history. But we need that A in maths and an A in science for the B-Eng and M-Eng, and the IB requirements are here. For BSc, again, 3 A's, because we expect the same academic level of attainment, but we don't have the same requirements. Okay, so you don't need the maths for BSc, but you need at least one physical science. So you need an A in at least biology, chemistry, or physics, and then 2 A's at your discretion. Okay, and that's to reflect the fact that there's less of the engineering and the mathematics required for the BSc. Okay, those you can find those online as well if you need to review those. One thing I'll talk about very quickly, because I teach it, my module in the first year has a huge wet lab practical course, and that's over in the new purpose-built wet labs at UCL East. So in that first year, all of the cohort, the BEng, the MEng, and the BSc will all come over to Stratford to take part in their wet labs for 8 weeks. It's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours every Friday, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, and then reading week and another 4 weeks where we do practical based lab research. Okay, it's lots of fun. So I teach that module, which is why I've got it in here. I like to plug my own module. Okay, but it's a great fun in that first year in term 2. I've talked really about the theoretical stuff, but we also have, and we like to develop and build soft skills in our graduates. Yeah. So can you present? Can you talk to people? Can you network? Okay. Because lots of your life will be about interfacing with other people. Okay. So again, I like to say you can have the great research, the best research in the world. If you can't tell people about it, if you can't convince them, if you can't bring them on that journey with you about that research, it's not going to go anywhere, because life is about talking to and working with other people. Okay. We also have a huge industrial network that suggests projects, that do our year in industry. Okay. And they come in to review. This is your design project. This is this is a picture of a design project. Okay. Process design for production of MABs, monoclonal antibodies. And this is one of the industry supervisors who's come in to mark the project and assess it. Yeah. The oral presentation. Very quickly, I know I keep saying that. Our graduates go on to lots of places. Obviously, they work in industry, in the biotech industry, but they also go on to work in things like finance and consultancy, because we've developed a critical analysis, a numeric graduate, and a person who can forecast and watch markets. And of course, that's very attractive to industry and in the city as well. Okay, in the UK, people also go on to do further study. In the UK, at least, the biotech sector and globally, there's a huge amount of investment in the biotech sector, which is a recognition of the fact that lots of the new therapeutics, lots of the new production mode will be in the biochemical mode, yeah, in the biological mode, using biological systems. And so it's a growth sector. Why should you come to us? Why would you want to come to us? Well, you come because you study an exciting degree at a world-class university. If you do the BEng, the MEng, it's that path to chartership, okay? You join that network of professionals in the biotech sector and biopharma, okay? And you can engage with cutting-edge research, yeah? So it's not just lectures of old material. You will get the new cutting-edge research fed back to you in those lectures as well. We're also a really active research department. We're a very successful research department, and we get lots of research grants in areas like vaccine manufacturing, okay, plastic waste degradation, and many more. You can read more about our activities online, okay? For those of you who come from a slightly different background, who don't have a conventional route to university, there's also our engineering foundation year, okay? And that's for people who meet certain characteristics, and you can find out more on the website, yeah? You can stay in touch here, and you can let us know how we have done here, which is a new slide. I'm going to stop sharing, and that's a real whistle-stop tour. Oh, can you let me stop? There we go.
Right.
Perfect. That is a bit shorter and condensed because I wanted to give enough time for questions. Okay, happy to take questions on any of those slides.
Fantastic. Actually, a lot of the questions that come in, I think you kind of covered them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to some of the ones which I think weren't really part of that slide. So bear with me a moment, and I will boot that up in front of me. So I think somebody actually asked what type of research they would get to do if they was to do a degree with us. I mean, you mentioned some of the areas of research, but perhaps if you could explain some of the examples of areas of research. I mean, some of the ones which I've spoken about is people get very interested in stem cell and gene therapy or lab grown food. But are there any other examples of areas of research that undergraduates get involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk and I'm going to look for a slide where I have some titles. Okay, let me have a look. So when you come to us, we teach you lab-based practical skills in that wet lab. And as you go through the course, you'll do lab-based practical stuff, which is really example-based. So we've structured it. It's not really academic research in that it's not on something that we don't know about. Okay. Only in that third year will you be working on a project, which is sort of doing fundamental research where you're investigating an actual research question, and that's dependent on what questions the academics put out and what projects they have, and it also depends a little bit on what they research. What I'm going to do is very quickly share a slide where I've got some of the titles from last year's research, okay? And we can see what sort of things went out there. So I'm going to go full screen. Bear with me. Try to go full screen. Right, can you see that? Kim, you might have to say yes or no.
Yep, that's all good.
Perfect. Industrial biotechnology is really focused on the production of chemicals, yeah, fine chemicals and things like that. So these are some titles of the things of the projects you'll put out. So you might be using enzymes for biocatalysis for the production of value-added chemicals to produce new strains for production of things like oils or producing small molecule things. Yeah, it's a lot more focused on that. I had one which isn't here, which is about plastic degradation. Yeah, because I do a bit of work in plastic degradation. So how do we use enzymes to break down polypropylene? That was a third year project, just gone. I had this year. Macromolecular medicines, you might be things like how do we, this is a lot more focused on sort of AI, some of the titles. So we have a lot of people working on AI. How can we use AI to design them better? How can we understand the cost drivers? Coming back to that cost that I was talking about when you're talking about mRNA, because it costs a lot to make it. Can we reduce the cost to make it more available? How do we benchmark those processes? So you're doing the research to benchmark those processes. Those are some examples in macromolecular medicines. Cell therapy and bioprocess. Here's some lab-grown meat stuff. Can you make microcarriers for lab-grown meat that you can just eat? Yeah. Can you look at sustainable innovations for cultivated meat? Can we use, again, AI or computer learning to design better processes? Okay, so this is just an example of some of the research topics that were available in this most recent round of research projects, but there are of course many more available. Yeah, and they fall broadly into those three areas. Okay, I hope that gives a little flavor of what it is, but of course it's different every year because the research questions move on every year.
There are some questions that have come in from the audience here.
Yep.
Somebody's asked about the ratio of application to acceptance in our programs. I know it changed from year to year. Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, it does change from year to year. We're certainly seeing more applications, okay, and we get more applications than we make offers. Offers are based on predicted grades, so that's the first cutoff. And then usually when we make offers, we don't. In the most recent years, we've made more offers than we get people who make their grades and come to us. Okay, so at the moment there are more offers made than people who actually make their um, grades and come to us. Okay, so if you get an offer and you make your grade, in the UK, you're going to come to us. Overseas, of course, it's a choice about whether you come or not. But we're actually at the moment, we in the past few years, we haven't been turning people away once we've made an offer and they've got their grades. Yeah, but I can't give you, I haven't got the percentage off the top, like how many applicants make offers and things like that. Yeah. So the main thing is if you've got an offer, make sure you make your grades then you can come and study with us.
Great, thank you. I've got just bear with me a moment because I've got a question here. There a couple of people actually asked what kind of careers you go on to. Somebody's asked whether people
Oh,
go on to IT, ISD, and it comes up quite often. Just want to say that Jack actually did a whole session on what can I do with a degree in biochemical engineering. So I'll pop a link to that in the chat so you can watch that another time. But if you search on YouTube, Jack Jeffries, what can I do with a degree? So Jack, if you want to mention that quickly, but there is a whole session on that as well, which you can
yeah,
watch.
yeah. What percentage of graduates go on to the computing or IT sector? That's interesting. So it depends what you mean by computing or IT sector. Yeah. So it most of our graduates either go to work in the biotech sector, or the most common other place they go to is sort of consultancy or finance, okay, which may involve some computing, right? Most things do. How many go on to be actual sort of software designers and things like that? I'm not so sure. That's much more dependent on their skill set when it comes to coding. We do a bit of coding. Of course, there are optional modules you can take at the computer science department where they will teach you coding and stuff like that. But that is kind of, it's not it's part of our degree, but the core competencies of our degree are biochemical engineering, yeah, not software design. So definitely we probably have had students who are whizzes at software design and coding, and they go on to work in IT, but it's not I wouldn't say it's a huge outstream of our undergraduates, yeah. But I'm not saying that they don't go there either.
Great.
That
Somebody
answers the
else
question.
actually asked a fairly detailed question, which is how much detail would this degree go to into genetics and macromolecule subjects, so carbohydrates and proteins?
Yeah.
I think that's an area they're quite interested in.
Perfect. Right. So when it comes to genetics, it's not the common sort of hereditary or Mendelian genetics that you might be familiar with. So we're not be talking about, eye color or phenotypic response in that way. Yeah, inheritance of things like that, which is much more of a population or a human genetics. Okay. When I talk about genetics, I'm usually talking about the expression of genes, yeah, to produce either protein or enzymes, yeah, because those are the therapeutics that we make. So how genes work, as in at the molecular level, how you turn them on, how you turn them off, what they make, and what's made from the things that you make from genes, that genetics, which is much more molecular biology, and enzymatics is what we teach, and we teach in the first year on my course. So that's that. You have to understand how genes are regulated and they're expressed, because lots of the things that biochemical engineers make are protein based, yeah, or are made by proteins like enzymes. And so you need to know how to construct and use the genes which will make those things. So genetic engineering in that way. But it's not genetics as in um, recessive or dominant alleles which cross over and give rise to phenotypic, yeah, but you can use that terminology, of course, because if you have a gene and it makes an enzyme, the phenotype you've got is the enzyme. Yeah. I hope that clarifies the difference between sort of genetics, as in like a course on genetics and inherited genetics, and how we use genes in biochemical engineering. So that was one part of it. The other part was on macromolecules, things like, so things which is much more biochemistry. So proteins, lipids, DNA. Again, in that first year, we cover the main macromolecules, things like lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins in a good level of detail, but not a huge level of detail. Okay, so you need to understand them. You need to understand how their structure affects their function, but we won't expect you to be able to, going forward, list off, the chemical structures of all of the sugars. Yeah. We just need to know, like, what's the difference between a sugar and a lipid, and the roles they play in a cell or in a biological environment. But we teach that in the first year, and that may come up a bit more. But it's not organic chemistry. You won't be pushing arrows. We won't be doing any molecular mechanisms and things like that, not in the great detail. Okay. It's just a bit of an understanding. I think that was two. And was there a third part to that question, or was that it?
Well, I mean, they're just asking about sort of thing about macromolecule subjects, carbohydrates and proteins
Yeah,
and
so
things.
I
Is
think
that
that was covered by that, which was like we will talk about the main macromolecules because of course that's really has a really important effect on how cellular physiology and cellular function. But we're not expecting you to I won't be like, okay, go away and draw me the structure of glucose, sucrose, fructose. Yeah. You may be able to ask to recognize them, but you won't be asked to draw them. And then that's just an underpinning level of information. Yeah, okay.
there's a really good question that came in, which asks for it's quite a subjective thing, but they asked, do you think biochemical engineering is a more niche subject than any other degree, and should students apply and be very sure of what they want to? I mean, my response was I think that sometimes counterintuitively, something like chemistry or biology can actually give you quite a narrow pathway, whereas the soft things that we teach in our program, the fact there's numeracy, literacy, and the application of maths and physics means that it can open up a lot more to you. But I'd be really interested what your view is on niche and how clear you want to be
It's a,
about the
it
subject.
is, that's a really interesting question. I think the key comes back to the application. And I think this is true of most engineering degrees, right? Engineering degrees, engineers are application focused. Yeah. Well, how can we use what we know to make something that will go to people. As soon as you introduce the fact that you need to make something which is going to be used by humans, it becomes very complicated because human people are extremely complicated, yeah, and how things get to them is complicated. So already you've got a broader view of how things work and operate in society. So that's broader. Take chemistry, or I did biochemistry. It's much more primary science focused on understanding. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't do application. Lots of chemists go on to do application, but it's not inherent to the degree. It's very much theoretical and lab-based process. Yeah. Only then after you've done that, right, you start to think about the broader context and what do I do after? Where do I go? With the way we teach and with engineering, I think in more general, it's much more industry it's much more industry aligned and it's much more application focused, which already gives you a broader view. One, and then two, because as Kim said, we're teaching soft skills, we're teaching analytics, we're teaching market forecasting, we're teaching presentation skills, we're teaching how to work in teams. You've got a soft skill set that's valuable in lots of industries, not just in the biotech sector. Yeah. So that then makes you more employable, even more employable than having a good degree from a good university, which is oftentimes what gets you into lots of graduate degree schemes anyway. Yeah. Good degree from a good university. Now, on top of that, you've got all the soft skills, all the networking skills, all the presentation skills, all of that added in already. So that maybe makes it more broad and more applicable, is how I see it. Yeah. Which isn't to say that you can't get a really valuable degree doing something which is like, chemistry or biology or biochemistry. Yeah.
And also, I just want to say that feedback from a lot of students is that the opportunities on the degrees that we do give you a chance to try out lab work.
Yeah.
Consultancy. It really gives you the chance to explore different areas. So although people can think it's niche, it actually gives you the opportunity to really try things out and decide whether it's something you want to do personally. Um, one of the last
Absolutely.
so we're going to the last couple of minutes here, but a question which did come up is how much of our degrees are shared across programs? And I think it's worth thinking in terms of the IEP program and the BSc, how much similarity and how much difference there is, maybe from the first year and onwards, are with other programs in engineering.
Yeah, good question. So for the BEng and the MEng, most of your modules are sort of internal to our department, focused on biochemical engineering, biochemistry, molecular biology. The IEP is shared across the whole undergraduate cohort of the engineering faculty. Okay, but that's one module that goes across term one and term two. Okay. On some of our core modules, which our cohort take, those are also optional modules for the college, okay? And you might get 1 to 2 to 3 people from different departments coming onto those modules on any given module. But the bulk of people on those modules are biochemical engineers, yeah? So in my molecular biology module, every year I get 1 or 2 people from a different department asking whether they can take it as an optional module. But the cohort is predominantly biochemical engineers, okay? For the BSc, the biochemical engineering modules you do with us are, of course, with our cohort. Some of the modules you do accountancy, okay, and is run by the the department which does accountancy. Okay, so you're on those modules. Yeah, so it's a bit more shared. But that kind of balances out the fact that the BEng and the MEng cohort have a shared module which is across the faculty. Yeah, okay. And then, of course, when you choose your optional modules, you'll most likely be choosing them from different departments. So you'll be integrating into different departments teaching. Okay, so you get that experience there. There is crossover a lot because we like to keep the cohort feeling between the BEng and the MEng. You have shared modules, you come together to do those, you do your final year design project together, you do your wet labs together. So that cohort hopefully is maintained. So it's not BEng and MEng and BSc, it's the full biochem cohort that maybe do slightly different things, but they're still one cohort. So hopefully that answers the questions about integrating with different people from different disciplines and different places.
Fantastic. And I mean, perfectly, Jack. That really takes us to the end of the session. Um, you could almost be a TV presenter. That was absolutely spot on.
I missed my call in,
You did
obviously.
miss your comment. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much to everyone who's joined us today. We did have a couple of questions about postgraduate talk programs, so the MSc and MRes. This session is very specifically about degrees at UCL Biochemical Engineering. However, as you've registered through the UCL system, you will get alerts on other events that come up on our MSc program. So just make sure that when that if you fill that form in, you have expressed an interest in postgraduate talks, that's BSc and MRes, and that means that when we have things coming up with the tutors that teach those, keep warm activities, so just to keep you engaged with the programs, you'll get invited to those as a matter of course. So that's really brought us to the end. There will be a recording available if you want to review any of this. But in the meantime, thank you very much for giving your time on this Wednesday morning. It's been great to have this with you. Thank you for your time, Jack, and I hope you have a fantastic week.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week and hopefully see you all very soon.